It's time we give back. Sow a seed and show someone where love's at. Even if you don't give a dime, give your heart and share your time. Help somebody else in life. Give back. Let's give back.
Welcome to this episode of Ignite, Empower, Transform. My name is Hosea James Givan II, and I am your host. Today we are blessed to have in our company the legendary principal here in the Bronx, Mr. Torres. Louis, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. So we're going to start out by basically, man, can you share with our audience your Bronx story?
Yeah, so my Bronx story brings me back to the Soundview section of the Bronx. Back in the 70s and 80s. I don't know if you know about Elder and Watson back then.
Oh, I've heard.
Yeah, it was a very hot spot, but growing up in the community, I had family there. My father was the super of two buildings, so I was a super son. I had my brother, my sister, and it was just, it was different. It was like a family atmosphere. The water hydrant would be where we would go in the summer to play in the fire hydrant. And we would have block parties. My father was one of the first people to start block parties back then. But it was just a different feel. Like you can go outside at 8 at night, play skellies in the street, stickball. It was a different world. In the Bronx back then, it was a time where a child can be a child.
Right.
But my whole life changed when I went to high school. I went to high school. My guidance counselor told me that.
Can I ask what high school did you go to?
Stevenson High School.
Stevenson High School.
Mm-hmm. Adelaide East Stevenson High School. So my guidance counselor told me that I was not going to be able to finish college if I attended college. She told me it was better that I join the military.
Wow.
So back then, at the age of 18, your parent could sign you off. So my mother, she signed me into the military, and I left one war to go to another war, it seemed. But I wanted to make sure that I benefited from the military and came back to make sure that no other child had to go through what I went through and make a decision as to going to the military instead of going to college because someone felt that you was not ready. Who has that power to determine what your future should be?
Right. It's so unfortunate, man. When I'm a guidance counselor, so I'm moved by what you just said, and I'm sorry that you had to experience that. I believe in seeing the best in the child and helping them to fulfill their full potential. And oftentimes, sometimes we miss the mark. Sometimes we miss the mark, and the goal is to make sure that we minimize those types of situations. So you went from the military to
education.
Education. So tell us about that transition?
Yeah. So the great thing about going into the military during Desert Storm, you become more familiar with life. You realize mortality exists out there, right? You realize that life is short. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to play any games. So as soon as I came back from the military, I enrolled in college.
Can I ask a question just before we move into the college experience? You were actually in the war zone? Okay.
No, so I fortunately I didn't go to the war.
Okay.
I was 18 years old, so I'm very young. I'm going into boot camp. I'm finishing boot camp. I'm coming back home. Then Desert Storm happens.
Right.
The great thing about Desert Storm, which is not so great, was the fact that it was a quick war.
That's correct.
They bombed Iraq and quickly returned back. So by the time I was going to be sent over, the war was over.
Okay.
It was over, but it really wasn't over.
Right.
So I didn't have to go away.
Okay,
so then I returned back home, and I immediately enrolled in Hostos Community College.
Okay.
I could have chosen any college I wanted to go to, but I chose Hostos because Hostos to me was like community, family.
Right.
And I love and I admire Eugenio Maria de Hostos, who is the namesake of the college, because of all the activism and great things he did. And I really felt that was the place I needed to go. So I attended Hostos. I finished my associate's degree in Hostos Community College in science. I attended City College, got a bachelor's degree from City College in child psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got a master's degree from Mercy College.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got a
Okay.
master's degree from Mercy College in technology education.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wound up with an advanced degree from Hunter College in administration. And then I was one of the only Puerto Ricans to graduate from the New York City Leadership Academy. I was the second class
Oh, wow.
back, when Leadership Academy was in place.
That's quite an honor, brother.
Yeah, so
Congratulations.
I proved my guidance counselor wrong, right?
Yeah, you sure did, man. You sure did. And
Yeah.
that's a wonderful story. So then you went from getting the training to what was your next step?
So after completing New York City Leadership Academy,
Mm-hmm.
I was about 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped from teacher to principal.
Mm.
I never was an assistant
So
principal.
where did you teach?
I taught at, I started my teaching career at MS 52, which is now MS 302.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to IS 125,
Mm-hmm.
Pugsley Avenue, and then I went and
That's
did my,
near us.
yeah, near where we live,
Yeah.
yep. And then I went and I did my internship at IS 174, which is right up the block from where I live,
Exactly.
with Anthony Orzo, which, he was an amazing principal. So I was very fortunate. I was able to, remain in the community that I lived, to serve my community. And my father was still the super of the buildings. He
Oh,
was
wow.
super of the two buildings for 45 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he passed away, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, the sad part is, and this is one of the things that growing up made me realize that you have to do things because it's the right thing to do and not because you're going to get an award. My father worked for 45 years and he was never recognized for that effort. He was one of the original people to start block parties in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And he was a community leader before community leaders existed.
Right.
And he quietly passed away.
Mm-hmm.
But 45 years he dedicated to the Bronx.
That's amazing, man. I want to go drift back a little bit back into your childhood. What are some of the activities, some of the things you did as a young person? What were some of those?
Yeah,
You
so
talked about playing in the street and that kind of thing, but were there any programs that you were involved with?
Yeah, so for me, the streets were my playground.
Okay.
That was basically what we had.
Mm-hmm.
We would go out, play stickball in the street. We would do pickup football games. Actually, Ruben Diaz Jr., the borough president, we played football against him. He was always better than me in basketball because he was taller, but football, I kind of, I'm bigger. So I could handle my own in football.
Right.
But we played street. Each block had its own team. We would play against each other.
Who organized that? Did you organize it yourselves, or did
So
were
my
there-
father started softball leagues back then. He would start softball leagues. So there would be a team, and then we would play and compete for trophies. And this is what my father wanted to do. He wanted to bring the community together through sports and
What
activities.
is your father's name?
Angelo Torres.
Okay.
Angelo Luis Torres. We could also call him Luis Angelo Torres, or they used to call him Super, for Soup.
Okay.
Yeah, so he started softball leagues. He felt that we can bring peace through sports.
He's absolutely right, brother.
So
Those are the kinds of things, man. As I look at where we are today, and we talked about then and now, it's so important to resurrect that spirit of Angelo Torres and identify and make people tap into that spirit of giving back, getting involved, caring about your community. I can only imagine what might have happened if you didn't have an Angelo Torres in your community, and how many young people he probably impacted in a positive way. We already know what he's done for you,
absolutely.
but those other young people.
Absolutely. I mean, I always tell people, it's better to shoot basketballs than guns, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm always pushing, these things, teaching legal business before they learn illegal business, you know? So these are things that my father instilled in me.
Right.
And I want to keep carrying on that spirit.
Right.
I want to keep doing those things because at the end of the day, it's about, my father's legacy, carrying it forward, and doing everything possible to end poverty and inequity that exists in this world.
Amen. Amen. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to take a quick break and then come back with more of your story.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Thank you.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science, become the mayor or something, make the situation better for other people. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
With the groove, show proof, keep it smooth as I bust the move. Hey, yo, step it swiftly, you with me, keep up. If not, just stop, pop a squat, put your feet up, read up, pay attention, listen to the melody. Remember what you heard, got my words to the spell of me. Top notch, got them all jumping like hopscotch, or jumping rope like double dutch in the air. Show me what you got, keep it hot like the heater. You thinking you a treat, cause you're sweet, but I'm sweeter. Leader of the pack, cause they all stay behind me. I'm old school, you don't skip tracks, you rewind me. Find me, working on my craft.
Welcome back to this segment of Ignite, Empower, Transform. We are here with the BRONX Principal, Luis Torres. Luis, yo man, I was truly touched by what you shared with us about your past, and particularly as it relates to your dad, because we had that in common. My father and mother were both very involved with the community, and their involvement helped to shape my sense of obligation to give back, and I see that that's trickled down to you as well.
Yeah, my mother has the door open all day long.
There you go.
Anybody can come into the house. If they're hungry, my mother will feed them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only my father has had an impact on me, my mother had a great impact on me as well. And she's alive and she's still the same way.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen. Amen. So let's talk about your role today and the things that you're involved with. I know we have another thing in common. We both live in Shore Haven, so we're neighbors.
Yeah.
But we also had a connection that we both realized recently. I started teaching, my first teaching position was at PS 55.
Oh, wow.
And that's where I know you'll share with the audience in your history why that's relevant.
So you sent me the picture, which was funny, because that was before my time, but
Yep.
Mr. Plummer was the principal back then.
Mhm.
And I admire Mr. Plummer because for me, a principal that leaves a legacy behind, and you still see artifacts of their work, that says that person had a major impact on the community, and Mr. Plummer had that. And that's the way I feel. I feel that our time on this earth is very short.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I'm going to give 20 more years. I'm going to push 20 years because I don't know what after the 20 years what I'm going to be able to do.
Right.
So for me, it's just a hustle game. I'm there. I see a lack of resources. I see a lack of supports in the community. And I'm there just to hustle, use my ability to hustle to bring in as many partners and resources to the school community as possible to ensure that our children have an equal right to education just like any other child in any other community. It's hard.
Yes, it is.
It's not easy because people don't like to invest in areas where they're not going to get something back. For me, it's about doing everything because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And the more we have an impact on that community, it's going to have a positive impact on our own communities.
Right.
Right. So I've been doing a lot of community work. About 5 or 6 years ago, we were named a community school, even though I had been doing it for 8 years already. I've been the principal of CS 55 for 14 years now.
14 years.
Right in the middle of the Claremont houses, right in the middle of 4 housing projects.
Wow.
Just bringing in all the resources.
That's a tough area.
Yeah, it's not anything that I'm not used to, right? I grew up on Elder and Watson.
Right.
It's just a little bit more challenging because it's more condensed.
Right.
There's so many people on top of each other in such a small area,
Yep.
and not enough resources. So as a school, I'm trying to do everything possible. I always tell people, it's about the 5 priorities, right? Food, shelter, safety, health, and then education is the 5th priority. So I have to meet those 4 other needs before I can get to education. So as a school principal, I learned early on that I can't be dependent just on school funds. I have to be able to meet those 4 other needs. So I do a lot of work around health, wellness. I involve everyone from the police department, Vanessa Gibson, who I view as a sister to me, Michael Blake, who's a brother to me. So the elected officials in the neighborhood are like family to me. Ruben Diaz, like I mentioned earlier, and anyone who's willing to help, I connect with, and I view them as family. So as a principal, I use my hustling skills, I use my ability to network with people, And I basically have a passion to make sure that all the children in this world have an equal opportunity and access to equitable resources.
That's amazing, man. And you have some really unique programs that you've actually brought into your school that I'd love for you to share with our community.
So we have a hospital in the school. Montefiore has been in our school for many years, but when I came on board, I actually expanded the services. So next year, this September coming, next school year, September, we're gonna have a dentist,
Wow.
a psychologist, ophthalmologist, nurse, and doctor on staff full-time, courtesy of Montefiore
That's tremendous, man.
Health Services. We have, and Dr. David Appel has been instrumental in supporting that effort through Montefiore. And the school does not pay for anything. The other partnership that we have is with the Green Bronx Machine. So through the Green Bronx Machine and Stephen Ritz, we grow our own vegetables all year long.
That's outstanding, man. That's
We actually
outstanding.
feed the community. We're FDA approved, so now we can actually serve the vegetables we grow in our cafeteria if we want to. And aside from that, the children ride bikes while they make smoothies, all types of stuff. I call it Willy Wonka land.
Yeah.
Steve Ritz has done an incredible job there. I also partner with graffiti artists like the Tats Crew, Bio, and others who have come in and just really made the school look more artsy and bring the arts into the school. And then I have a partnership that I recently established with Windows of Hip Hop, with Melissa LeBron from Windows of Hip Hop. Now we're gonna have Melly Mel and Kaz involved in our school, Grandmaster Melly Mel, Grandmaster Kaz teaching word work.
Wow.
You know what better way to do it than through rap, right?
Absolutely.
And then they're gonna also put a music studio in the school building, so that's gonna be another amazing project. And then we have a good number of dollars being invested in the building right now. There's an $18 million project to replace all the bricks and all the windows so that the building will look brand new. I have over $900,000 that Vanessa Gibson has committed to the school to redo the auditorium and revamp the cafeteria. The cafeteria was in the basement. We're moving it to the first floor. And Ruben Diaz Jr., in my collaboration with the charter school in the building, Success Academy, we were able to jointly apply for $1 million grant to redo our playground. So we got $1 million playground, and with a mural from the Tats Crew on the wall.
That's dope.
You know, so these are just a few of the things. I mean, we have so many partnerships that we're establishing, creating. I have Tony Melendez Baseball is now coming on board. We want to increase the number of African American boys going into baseball. And what better way to do it than have an actual farm club right in the neighborhood, right? So, you know, the list goes on and on and on. I'm even partnering with Drug Free America now to do a lot of drug information and provide services to the community. We partnered up with, let me see, Drug Free America, International Youth Fellowship, where now on Saturdays we had children learning Korean and Japanese.
Wow.
And mindfulness.
Really?
I mean, these are just a few of the things. It goes on and on and on.
It's quite, it's several special programs that make you unique, not only as a school, but as a school leader. And your feistiness, your tenacity to really go after these types of programs and forge these types of relationships. You understand the importance of building those relationships with political leaders that can help to bring resources into your school, and I think that's valuable. And your community is benefiting, and of course, outstandingly, your children are benefiting as well. So, I commend you, man, on your leadership and your vision and your focus. So what we're going to do is we're going to take another break, and we're going to come back, and then we're going to close out. I don't think we can get all your story in one 30 minutes, so we might have to have you come back another time. But we would like to have you come back for sure. And we're going to take a quick break at this time.
This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Remember that to love America is to love all Americans, because love has no labels.
Welcome back to this final segment with the Bronx Principal, Louis Torres. And Louis, I have to say, man, again, each segment has had me touched in a different way. We're kindred spirits in that desire to uplift our community and to partner and network to bring in resources. You're on another level, brother. You know, in terms of just that kind of thinking. I want to close out because I know there's a couple of things in this segment that I definitely want us to touch on. You're amazing at social media, getting your message out to the community and to the world at large. And as a result, I'm able to kind of keep up with Facebook friends, we're on Instagram, some of the outstanding programs and projects that you're doing. One most recent became a national phenomenon in terms of its impact, how the tragedy impacted the Bronx community. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so myself and David Aviles from Puerto Rican Flags Up, we were up at 2:30 at night thinking about the tragedy that happened to Junior in the Bronx. You know, justice for Junior. All these things started to run through my mind. And while I'm thinking about how can I do something to have some sort of impact, to make sure that there's no more Juniors happening again, David Aviles was in his bed thinking about the same thing. Next morning I wake up, I'm posting about Junior, and you know, we need to put these laws in place. I mentioned Junior's Law. I look on David's Facebook page. He has a petition on for 100,000 signatures.
Wow.
To get Junior's Law passed. We were only at about, I would say 2,000 at the time. We connected. We realized that we were thinking the same way. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that conversation beforehand. Mm-hmm. It just happened. I got involved. David got involved. We started pushing. In 2 days, we had 106,000 signatures.
That's amazing.
To make sure that Junior's Law gets passed.
What is Junior's Law? So
basically, Junior's Law for me is a way for us to come together as a community and figure out how do we prevent tragedies from happening. Mm-hmm. For David Aviles, he has his own feelings towards it, but same idea. Providing training to the bodega owners and businesses, making sure that they know how to respond to an emergency. Mm-hmm. Putting a safety button under the counter so the bodega owner doesn't even have to call the police, just hit the button. Mm-hmm. But more than anything, when we grew up, the bodega was the safe place for all of us.
Correct.
They knew our families. They knew us as children. We used to patronize their stores.
Right.
Whenever we had a problem, we would run to the bodega.
Right.
That was what it was back then. So we wanted to make sure that came back. We wanted to bring that feel again.
Right.
The bodega being a safe haven, we wanted to bring that feel back, and that's what Junior's Law does. It brings that feel back to these businesses that are open at night, making money off our communities, that they can provide a safe haven for our children, especially in a time of need. But I don't blame the bodega owner because nobody knows how people are going to react during an emergency.
Right.
What we have to do is provide training so that people are better prepared for the emergencies.
Right. And again, that's the situation. I had an opportunity we had one of our guests from London, England, and he was talking to me about how it just moved him, that situation. Also, it's not just in this country, it's around the world.
Think, in 2 weeks, 106,000 signatures.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
That is powerful.
I mean, 2 days, not even 2 weeks, 2 days.
Yeah.
It was 106,000. People thought I would do that in a month.
Wow. So, and you do a march too, don't you?
Yeah, we do a march every year called Lauren's Kids Care Walk from our school.
Say that one more time.
Lauren's Kids.
Lauren's Kids, okay.
Kids Care Walk.
Okay.
And
how did you come up with the name?
It was started through my student government. Mm-hmm. They would follow Lauren. She was, at the time, she wasn't a senator. Lauren would do a walk in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Anti-abuse walk, because she was an abused child growing up.
Got it.
So she wanted to make sure that this didn't happen to other children. So she did a program in our school, an anti-abuse program. But she left. She went back to Florida. Our children followed her to Florida. Wow. And they saw that she does a walk in Florida. So they said, why don't we do a walk in the Bronx? Mm-hmm. This was the children. We started with 100 children. And right now, we're at 1,000 children.
And different schools are involved now, too,
Yeah,
right?
we went from one school to 10. We have to share the glory, right?
Wow.
So the police department, thank you to the police department, Ramon Garcia, who's the assistant commissioner, Lori Perez. They support us. They make sure the children get to the stadium safely. And then the Yankees, Brian Smith from the Yankees, he opened the doors to the stadium to make sure that our children have access to the stadium. And we do this all to denounce the violence and abuse that exists in our communities.
Okay, so unfortunately, we're gonna have to close this segment, man, and this show. And I do want to say, I definitely look forward to supporting your efforts. We're less than a mile from my school. PS 463 is less than a mile from your school. And certainly maybe the next March we can possibly join you guys.
Absolutely.
For that march. But again, I want to thank you, brother, for coming down and being a part of our show. And most importantly, thank you for everything that you're doing for our young people and the community that you service.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
All right, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Ignite, Empower, Transform. My name is Hosea James Givan II, and remember, if it's in your heart, do your part. Today's help equals tomorrow's hope. I love our youth. Take care.
I see all your smiles and all the tears showing down on your faces. But I know all the while it's gonna be okay, yes it is. Just open up your eyes. Open up your eyes. The sun is soon to shine. The sun is soon to shine. Aim your arrow high and keep reaching for the sky. It's time we give back. Sow a seed and show someone where love's at. Even if you don't give a dime, give your heart and share your time. Help somebody else in life. Give back. Let's give back. Don't forget, the children are our future.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Hi, I'm your host, Larry V. Stark Jr.
I'm your host, Rachel Cheeks Givan.
I'm your host, Hosea James Givan II.
I'm your host, Rebecca Givan.
Tune in to
Ignite
Empower
Transform
every Tuesday night
at 8
8 p.m.
on BronxNet.
Give back. Let's give back.
Your son wants to get a cat, but you're allergic.
Maybe he could be an outdoor cat that lives in our neighbor's yard, 3 doors down.
Mom.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.